Okay, I've got 13 minutes, so I gotta speed this up. I don't know how well you all know God. I mean, yeah, let me get straight to it. God is in. I've already wasted time just off of this intro. God is an OG. He is so powerful that he will permit things to happen that will cause the average person who especially those who are not spiritually inclined, his what he permits will cause them to become so angry with him. For this is why prayer is important. How do I explain this? Because I really want to get all my points across. There is nothing that God cannot undo. There is nothing that can happen that God cannot undo. Try to picture, even though you cannot, God's power and how literally nothing is impossible for him. When you have this power, when you have this knowledge, this wisdom to undo whatever damage is done, you will literally, or let me put it this way, there is literally nothing that you will not allow to happen. You would allow anything to happen because you could undo anything. And this is why prayer is important, because in the end, God will undo all things. But until that time, we are the ones who are going to go through these trials and tribulations. So if you want to be spared some trials and tribulations, then you have to pray, because God will permit it to happen because he's going to undo it. But before he undoes it, you're going to go through it. And if you don't want to go through it, then pray. This is why Christ prayed so incessantly. If you think about it, why did Christ have to pray so? He prayed all night to his Father about several things that he wanted done. And some of the things he prayed for, when you read the accounts in the Gospels, it's like, wait, does he really need to pray about this? I mean, why does he have to pray for his disciples to be watched over because of the wicked one? Like Christ said, watch over them because of the wicked one. Because I am going away from the earth, but they will remain in the earth. So watch over them, Heavenly Father. May they be one, just as you and I are one. Why is he praying for things that seem so obvious for God to already be doing? Because God will permit anything to happen, because he's going to undo it anyway. And Christ knows this. That's why Christ told his disciples, please do not give up in prayer. Don't give up. Keep asking. Bother God. Keep bothering him. Pray all night if you have to, because Christ knows what his Father will permit. I'm going to give you guys some examples. I penned this down while I was at work. Let me see. Pause it. When Christ came towards Jerusalem and he was like on the hilltop, in one account it speaks of him speaking about not one stone will be left upon a stone, right? About Jerusalem's destruction. But in another account, that part is forsaken, and it talks about how, in both accounts actually, it talks about how he was weeping over Jerusalem, and he was saying, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you killer of the prophets, and how much, I wanted to gather you together as a hen gathers her chicks, and protects them, but you would not let me. You would not let me." He is speaking about a prophecy that his father uttered about Israel. But why is Christ crying over Jerusalem? Because he sees the destruction that is going to befall them in 70 AD when they are surrounded by the Romans and the women are raped, the children are killed, the men are killed, right? Jerusalem is going to be destroyed by the Romans. I mean, the Romans are animals, and Christ knows what is going to happen. Now, if it's up to Christ, he would probably not have it that way. Just as much as if it was up to Christ, he would have rather not have to die, because he prayed to God, please, Father, let this cup pass from me, but let not my will be done, let your will be done. So Christ didn't want to, but he had to submit to his Father, right? So too with the destruction of Jerusalem. He's crying because he doesn't want that to happen. He knows what's going to happen and he's crying. Why would you cry? Because it's something you have to do, like you have to let Jerusalem get destroyed. No, he's crying because he has to let his Father do it. He has to let his Father let Jerusalem get destroyed. Try to understand, people. So Christ, we could say Christ can pray and hope that that his Father will not let Jerusalem get destroyed. You see, but he's okay. So the point is, you guys will get where I'm getting to with this. So he's crying over Jerusalem, and he's weeping because Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, and he foresees it because his Father is going to permit it to happen. Okay, and it's almost like Christ's hands are tied because it's his Father's will, not necessarily his will. Because if it was his will, he ain't going to be crying about it. Okay. Prayer, it's like this is what God is going to permit to happen. Oh, you don't want it to happen? Pray about it. And if you move God's heart enough, he will not permit you to go through it. So like a classic example is Hezekiah. Hezekiah had an illness during the latter part of his reign, and he was going to die. The prophet Isaiah told him as much, that, yeah, you will not recover from your illness. You're going to die. Then as Isaiah left, Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and started praying to God and crying profusely and telling God, like, Yehovah, remember all the things I've done for you, and how I've done many things for you, right? Let me just keep it short. And his prayer moved God so much that while Isaiah was still in the courtyard, God spoke to Isaiah and told him, turn back and go to Hezekiah, because Hezekiah has humbled himself and has begged me to spare his life. So God added, I believe it was 15 extra years to his life. 15 extra years. Hezekiah is supposed to die. So this whole thing about predestination, no, if it was destined for Hezekiah to die at that time, well, God changed his mind and gave him 15 extra years. So now there's predestination, or there's destiny for people who have to take a bigger part of history, so like Nebuchadnezzar, Trump perhaps, or the man of lawlessness that will be revealed in the last days, or Judas Iscariot. Someone had to betray Christ, right? But when it comes to regular average people who don't play a big role in the scheme of things, there is no such thing as destiny. What's going to happen is going to happen. Like, it could be anything. And if you pray to God, he could change it. So you're not destined. It's not like your life is set in stone and anything like that, right? So I got to speed. I got like 4 or 3 minutes left. So Hezekiah not changed because it's not like God wanted him to die. He was just going to die because he was sick. But he moved God to impel God to add more years to his life. This is how important prayer is. There's a passage in the Old Testament where God says that the sins of the Israelites was so bad that even if Moses and Samuel prayed before him and begged him, he would not listen to them. The powerful point behind that is, look at what God is saying. This is how powerful prayers are. And A righteous man's prayer is very powerful, as the Bible says. But even righteous men such as Samuel and Moses, of course, their prayers can be strong enough to move God, but he was saying this is how grave the sins of the Israelites were. So grave that even if Samuel and Moses prayed, he would not listen to them. So prayer moves God's heart. This is why Christ prayed so incessantly, because Christ was trying to get God to do certain things, because he knows his Father will. Because remember, God is so powerful, he will let anything happen. Okay, you say, why did God let that happen? Well, because he can undo it, and he is going to undo it. So why not let it happen? No matter how bad or traumatic an event is, it is not something that God cannot undo. So if you don't want to go through that, if you don't want your loved ones to go through certain things, pray and move God's heart so that he will say, okay, well, I was going to let them go through it, and then I'll just undo it. And so that, I'll give them such pleasant times in the future that these bad times won't be called to mind. But since you've prayed and showed faith, I won't let you go through it. This is how important prayer is, because God is such an OG. He is so powerful that why wouldn't he let you go through it if he can undo it? You have to understand the power of God. All right, like 2 minutes left. Christ gave an illustration about the need to always pray and to never give up. Right? That's exactly how the passage worded it. It said Christ gave his disciples an illustration about the need to never give up. Why would it say that about the need to never give up? Because Christ knows what his Father will permit. And in the illustration, he gave the example about a widow, I believe it was, that went to a king that feared neither man nor God. And when she went to him, the king would dismiss her, and he would keep dismissing her. But she kept on going, kept on going, kept on going, and kept on going. And eventually, the king just got tired of the woman and said, even though I don't fear God and I don't fear man, because this woman keeps bothering me, I will give her what she wants. And the point about that is, Christ said, you hear what the wicked king said? Now, if the wicked king would give in to the needs of a widow who is in need, how much more God, who loves us more than we could ever know what love is, our God who is love. So if we move him enough, he'll answer us. Okay, let me rush real. Sorry for being fast, and I'm rumbling a lot, but I want to get this point across before the audio ends. Moses was going through a lot of. He was overseeing all the judicial cases of the Israelites, and it was too much for him. And his father Jethro said, "This is what you should do." Right. The point is that God allowed Moses to go through all of that, but it was too much for Moses. But God just let it happen, because Moses didn't tell God that it was too much. And then later on, Moses told God later on about a different case that it was too much for him. And then God said, okay, I will take some of the spirit from you and give it to 70 other men. So it wasn't until Moses opened his mouth and told God that this is too much for me that God did something about it. If Moses stayed quiet, God would have permitted it to happen, because God is an OG and he can undo anything. So always